Actually, I wanted to start this block of classes with the Third Noble Truth. But Third Noble Truth is a bit heavy. So for the benefit of the newcomers, I've decided to revise Dana because it is very important as a start to our practice, and it's also important to people who are already practicing Buddhism. Okay, this topic of Dana will take 2 weeks. And let's start, and we'll start at the beginning, at a time when the Buddha had just realized Nibbana. Now, he gazed out upon the world and saw that sentient beings are like the different types of lotus flowers within a pond. Okay, namely, those who are submerged in the water, those on the surface, and those above the surface. And he made this observation that there were beings with little dust in their eyes and with much dust in their eyes, with keen faculties and with dull faculties, with good qualities and with bad qualities, easy to teach and hard to teach, and some who dwelt, seeing, fear, and pain in this other world. Now, the ones at or near the surface of the pond represent beings with little dust in their eyes. This means that their practice have reached maturity, and they are capable of being enlightened merely by being exposed to the Buddha's teachings. Now, there were several like that during the time of the Buddha. Thousands attained the first of the 4 stages of enlightenment, known as the Sotapanna or stream enterer stage. However, most people are like the lotuses growing deep below the surface. Now, these lotuses benefit from the sunlight, but still need time to reach the surface and blossom. And these lotuses represent people like you and me. Okay, we have faith. Pali is saddha. Okay, and we listen to the Buddha's teachings, but that is not enough. We have to put in the time and effort to practice Dhamma and develop the necessary qualities for enlightenment. So how do we nurture these necessary qualities? Okay, one very important area of training is in Dana. Now, Dana is the act of giving. Most people associate Dana with alms giving of the 4 requisites of food, robes, shelter, and medicine to monks and nuns. Dana actually means much more than that. So why is Dana so important? How does it support our practice? How does it fit in with everything we do? And how can we get the most out of every act of giving we perform? We are going to look at all these. First, where do you find Dana in the Noble Eightfold Path? Okay, let's do a revision. What are the 8 path factors? Starting with wisdom, there are 2 path factors here. Can you remember what they are? Right view and right thought. Then morality, there are 3 path factors. Did you get this right? Right speech, right action, right livelihood. And lastly, concentration, the last 3 path factors. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. There is no right giving. Okay, but Dana can be found in one definition of right view. So it comes right at the beginning. And what bhikkhus is right view that's affected by the taints, partaking of merit, ripening, and the acquisitions. Now, what does this mean? This is mundane right view applicable to people who are not enlightened yet. So they are still affected by the taints of craving, taints of becoming. That means you want to exist even after death, okay? And taints of ignorance. Ignorance here means you do not know the true nature of mind and body. Ignorance of the 4 noble truths. Now, here is merit gained through the understanding of what is good and bad, what is skillful and not skillful, what's appropriate and inappropriate, and you gained merit through doing the right things. Okay, we'll talk more about merit later. And this right view will not lead to enlightenment, but to a favorable rebirth. The acquisitions here refer to acquisitions of the 5 aggregates. For those who are new, if you don't know what the 5 aggregates are, it's all right. You pick it up slowly along the way, okay? Now, so this is mundane right view. No need to read the whole thing. You just have to pay attention to this part. There is what is given and what is offered and what is sacrificed. Now, this refers to the moral and the karmic significance of giving. Okay, giving creates the causes and conditions for good karmic results. You notice it comes right at the beginning, and it shows that acts of giving have power. So although dana is not a power factor of its own, and we shall see why at the end, it is frequently mentioned in the suttas. Now let us see where the subject of dana is usually found. First, okay, the first theme is gradual instructions or gradual training. The Buddha taught this mainly to householders, and it is a progressive one. It begins with a talk on giving, followed by a talk on morality and how being generous and virtuous can give you a good rebirth in heaven, okay, where the sense pleasures are so much greater. Then the Buddha explains the drawbacks of even this kind of happiness, as it is not true and lasting. And then renunciation, that means letting go, okay, as the only route to unconditioned and supreme happiness. The 4 Noble Truths are normally expounded only as last item, and only if the householder's mind was, in the Buddha's own words, ready, receptive, free from hindrances, elated, and confident. Then you have the 3 bases of meritorious deeds. Dana is first one again. Now, what is merit? Merit is actually an energy, okay, that comes up from skillful mental, verbal, and physical actions. It purifies the mind. It gives the person an inner sense of well-being that can sometimes be felt as joy, okay, or kind of lightness. It is something that is good and beautiful and does not harm self and others. Now, in the commentaries, these 3 qualities are expanded to the 10 bases of meritorious actions. I think a lot of you are familiar with this 10. Number 6, 7, and 9 can be included under dana. 4 and 5 come under sila, and the rest can be included under bhavana, mental development. 8 can also be sila. Actually, as your practice progresses, you will notice that numbers 4 to 10 can fit into any of the 3 bases of meritorious deeds, because dana, sila, and bhavana are interdependent and interrelated. Then you have these 10 perfections. It's a group of 10 qualities developed over many lifetimes by a bodhisattva, or bodhisattva in Sanskrit, refers to a person training to be a Buddha. And only the Buddha has perfected these 10 qualities, hence the term parami, meaning perfection. And these 10 factors, but we can also use it as a benchmark, okay, to gain enlightenment. Then we have dana as the first item of bonds of fellowship. These are the essential qualities that establish and then maintain the bonds between parent and child, between friends, relatives, and colleagues. Now, this impartiality here doesn't just mean absence of prejudice. It also means treating others with as much importance as you would treat yourself. Okay, so why is dana the first item in all 4 themes? Why does the Buddha treat dana as the most fundamental virtue in our practice? To know the answer, we have to refer to the 3 underlying tendencies, which are commonly referred to as BFFs, our best friends. First, being lobha. I like to use the Pali words instead for here, because lobha, dosa, and moha do not translate naturally to English. Okay, lobha means the mind going out there, always searching for pleasant experiences, okay, through the 6 senses of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. Dosa means wanting something but not getting it and being resistant to unpleasant experiences. And delusion here also means ignorance. That means ignorance of the true nature of body and mind. And from these three, you get a whole range, okay, of defilements that give us our unskillful and unwholesome thoughts, speech, and actions. What's in here are just examples. So we call these mental toxins. The causes one, the most blatant one, are those that form our selfish attachment to our material possessions, which come under which one? Greed, hatred, or delusion. Okay, and delusion underlies everything. Actually comes under greed. Now, the Buddhist path is about letting go. Which is the easiest to let go of? Possessions, body, or mind? Possessions, right? Now, that's why the path has to begin with dana. Dana opens the door to our spiritual growth and development because it is the best weapon against greed. When we give, we are separating ourselves from our possessions, whether the possessions are material like money or immaterial like sharing of information and skills. This act of giving takes away, at least for that moment of giving, that selfish quality in us, because the mental states of attachment and renunciation cannot exist at the same time in the mind. And dana is important, not just at the start of our Dharma practice, but it is also something we should do throughout our practice. Okay, cultivating a habit of giving and sharing cleanses the mind of its narrow and jealous grasping onto things. Dana frees us from the part of the ego that says that something is mine. Okay, and this egotism, the mind, let me move this. The mind, I, and self forms the basis of ignorance and attachment to craving. Giving requires the giver to take the needs of others into account and so promote empathy. And empathy nurtures metta. Metta is goodwill, loving kindness, okay? And karuna. Karuna is compassion, and vice versa. And the practice of giving creates joy in the giver and increases the feelings of warmth and mutual support in families, communities. Now, I'm sure all of you have experienced this kind of joy before. And do you find it different from the happiness we get from satisfying our sense desires? Okay, the joy of giving, I tell you, is definitely different from the joy you get when you tuck into your favorite char kway teow, right? The joy of giving is actually more refined. It's a lighter kind of joy. Now, there is another reason why we have to start with dana, why we cannot afford to be miserly. Because without abandoning these 5 qualities, one is incapable of entering and dwelling in the first jhana. Now, the jhanas are meditative absorption states that give us a very clear, steady, and unified mind that is needed for Dharma investigation and insight into the truth that leads to enlightenment. The first to 4th jhanas are defined by the Buddha as right concentration. We'll see more of this when we do the 4th Noble Truth. Okay, now, right concentration is the last factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. So, what are the 5 obstacles to the first jhana? That means you're not a hospitable person. You are not willing to share the support you get from your family. Okay, you're not willing to share what you have earned. You're stingy with praises. Now, miserliness with regard to Dharma can mean a lot of things, like, for example, not willing to share Dharma because you think knowing more Dharma than others gives you the upper hand and let you earn more merit than others. So, if you're stingy, there is no way you can practice right concentration because you can't even enter first jhana. That means you can forget about practicing the Noble Eightfold Path because all the 8 factors come together as a package deal. You cannot pick and choose. So who finds it more difficult to renounce, to let go? Lay people or monastic? Obviously lay people, right? Now, which one finds it more difficult to let go? The one with or without mental cultivation? The one without mental cultivation. And lastly, which one finds it more difficult to let go? Obviously, the selfish person. So to renounce means we have to learn to be generous. At the very least, we must learn to part with our possessions. If we cannot even do that, we can forget about meditation, because meditation and mental cultivation is about letting go. Now, in many books, dana is equated with generosity, but that is not totally accurate, because the mental state of generosity does not always accompany every act of giving. Some people give with aversion, like, you toss a coin to a beggar because you want to get rid of him. Some people give with indifference. And even if giving is accompanied by a wholesome state of mind, this wholesome quality covers a whole range of motivations, as we shall see later. So when the Buddha describes true generosity in the suttas, he uses the Pali word chaga, giving freely, being open-handed, delighting in being magnanimous, responsive to requests, delighting in the distribution of alms. He doesn't use the word dana. Dana is the practical act of giving, but chaga is the mental state that underpins this action. So with chaga, when we give, it is not with a feeling of loss, but rather with a feeling of fulfillment. So we start with dana, and true generosity is something we have to work towards, as it does not come naturally to many people. But with repeated acts of giving, we just keep giving, and you have mental cultivation, we can cultivate true generosity, that is chaga. So in practicing generosity, we are trying to cleanse our hearts of this attitude of selfishness. This is called creating merit through giving, in order to have a mind of compassion and caring towards all living beings without exception. So in essence, when we practice, generosity, we are trying to do this. So when we have wholesome motivations behind our intention to give, we create merit, which further motivates us to do good. Now, what we have covered so far is to show the importance of giving, which the Buddha said cannot be emphasized enough. Because if beings knew, as I know, the result of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, or would they allow the stain of miserliness to overcome their minds? What do you mean when the Buddha said, if beings knew, as I know? Because on the night of his enlightenment, he saw how beings moved from realm to realm, from birth to existence in the various realms, depending on what they do. The law and the law of cause and effect, determining where they end up. So from here, he saw that giving is very important. Even if it were their last morsel, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it if there was someone to share it with. But because as beings do not know, as I know, the result of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of miserliness overcome their minds. So from here, we can see that greed and selfishness are very powerful mental states that stain our mind and blocks our way on the path. Dana counters greed, and because giving helps to cultivate kindness and compassion, dana also counters hatred and ill will as well. And dana also sets in motion the practice of letting go of mind, I, and self, starting with what's mine. So at the heart of the practice, Giving, therefore, counters egotism, the belief in a self, okay, along with selfishness. Okay, now we are going to look at the 3 aspects to dana. Okay, so we can see how dana can be cultivated in the right way, and we'll start with the giver. Now, there are many ways of giving, skillfully and otherwise. The Buddha has stated different reasons for giving in various suttas. Okay, we are going to look at one of these. So there are 8 reasons for giving. What 8? Having insulted, one gives a gift. That means, for example, A doesn't like B and wants to impress upon B that he is very much better off. So he gives a gift which B cannot afford, just to remind him of that. Okay, very terrible. The second one gives a gift from fear to stop someone from victimizing you, like maybe, for example, protection money from the gangsters. Number 3, one gives a gift thinking he gave to me. Now, a lot of social obligations are based on this. Am I right? Now, Chinese have this saying, 还礼. Okay, what you give to me, I got to give back to you. One gives a gift thinking he will give to me. That means you expect something in return. And then giving is good. This part, cooking. I cook, these people do not cook. It isn't right that I, who cook, should not give to those who do not cook. Now, also translated in other formats as I am well off, these people are not well off. Basically, it means that you want to give because you're more fortunate than them. Then you give because I have given this gift, I will gain a good reputation. And lastly, for ornamenting the mind, equipping the mind, which means ennobling the mind, supporting the mind in mental cultivation, purifying the mind. So from here, you can see that giving in itself is good. But what is of prime importance is the state of mind that comes with this act of giving. So when do we give? In the Isata Sutta, King Pasenadi of Kosala asked the Buddha this: where, Lord, should a gift be given? And the Buddha answered, wherever the mind feels inspired, great king. Now, some translations show the word inspired as confident. Now, when in doubt, always fall back on the Pali version. Yatako Maharaja Chitam Pasidati. Now, Pasidati, this word has several meanings besides inspired and confident. Okay, it has all this whole list of meanings. So in context, Pasidati means a good state of mind, a mind that is not under any obligation to give, but chooses to do it because it takes pleasure in it and rejoices in it. However, even when one is inspired, the motivations behind the intention to give can be different. Which motivation is the best? Okay, let's see what the Buddha said. Now, there is a case where Venerable Sariputta, together with some lay followers, went to the Buddha and asked him this. Okay, could it be the case, Bhante? Okay, for those who are new, Bhante means teacher, that a gift given by someone here is not of great fruit and benefit? And could it be the case that a gift given by someone here is of great fruit and benefit? Okay, so in answer to that question, the Buddha gave a list of motivations that accompany the same gift given. We're just going to look at the relevant parts to show the various motivations in table form. Now, gives a gift with expectations, with a bound mind looking for rewards. Now, with a bound mind here looking for rewards means with a mind attached to reward. That means you want something in return. Okay, in this case, it means you want a good rebirth. Okay, it doesn't mean that, the second column you see here shows the realm in which you take rebirth. It doesn't mean that once you have this kind of motivation, you will definitely get reborn in this realm. The realm of rebirth is shown to reflect, okay, the quality of motivation or mental state during the act of giving. And in connection to that, the merit that the giver creates. So in this second part, gives a gift without expectations. The giver doesn't expect anything in return because it gives because of tradition or for altruistic reasons. Okay, you give because it is a wholesome act. You give because of tradition. Okay, I can move to the next slide now. This is what we saw earlier. You want to help because you can offer something which others cannot. Now, these are sages. The names here given are sages in Brahmanism, the prevalent religion at that time. That means you give because people that you respect and emulate have set such an example. And here, when you give, your mind becomes serene and gratification and joy arises. And you give because it ennobles the mind, purifies the mind. This is the whole list. Now, all the motivations listed are obviously wholesome, even if you expect something in return, because it gives you merit equivalent to rebirth in the heavenly realms. All right, so easy to give, isn't it? Now, this table shows a gradation, and it's also obvious which motivation is the best one and creates the most merit. Okay, it's the last one. That's why I remembered when I was in Sri Lanka and we were doing dana to Vera Gotami, and she was telling us to have this motivation in mind, to keep telling ourselves, may this act of giving ennoble my mind. Okay, to train your mind to see things that way. Now, most people start here. Impossible to give alms to an arahant, okay, for example, without thinking of making merit with it. Because you know later on next week when you give the arahant, you get a lot of merit. Okay, that is very normal, okay, to have that kind of motivation. But when you practice Dhamma correctly and diligently, you can expect the motivations to slowly shift. We can have more than one motivation behind your intention to give, but that is okay. All right, the more important thing is to keep giving with a wholesome attitude. Yes. Sorry? Okay, no questions, right? Can we keep the questions until the end? Yeah. An attitude includes not just your state of mind, but also your manner of giving. There are amongst these 5 gifts of a superior person. What 5? A person gives a gift out of faith. That means with a sense of conviction. You have to believe in what you are doing and believe that what you're doing is right. That means having faith in the Buddhist teachings. Okay, 2, gives a gift respectfully. It means attentively, without being dismissive or indifferent. Giving a timely gift. Gives with an empathetic heart. Gives a gift without denigration, without making the other person feel small, without harming the other person's self-esteem. Okay, so good mental states, they do dictate our speech and our actions. And in turn, it does affect our manner of giving, but do not take this for granted. We still have to be mindful of how we give, because the manner of giving is also what makes the gift very valuable. And we have to watch our attitude, not just at the time of giving, but also before and after that. And how is a donation endowed with 6 factors? There are a case where there are 3 factors of the donor and 3 factors recipients. We look at the 3 factors of donor first. Okay, and which are the 3 factors of donor? There is the case where the donor before giving is glad, while giving his or her mind is bright and clear, and after giving is joyful. Now, these are the 3 factors of the donor. Now, again, the Pali words used it's It has been translated into many different versions. But to make it simple, it means that we have to be happy before, during, and after giving. Okay, easier said than done. For example, I give you an example. You have an Ayya Sangha coming to Singapore. Ayya Sangha means a monk that is enlightened. So everybody gets very excited, and all your Kalayamitas, they want to do dana to this monk. You are not feeling well, but you do not want to be left out, because how often does an Ayya Sangha come to town, right? So you rush to buy food, okay, for the Sangha. To buy, do grocery shopping, and then you wake up very early the next day because you want to personally prepare the food to show your sincerity, and then you rush all the way to do breakfast dana, all the while feeling ill and tired. Now, do you think you can be in a good frame of mind throughout? Okay, at any stage of this dana, you may feel aversion instead. So you have to keep watching the mind. If you find that you cannot be happy, all right, then don't do dana. You just go with your friends, and I'll let you know how you can partake of merits later on. Okay, next point. What if we have nothing to give, either because we cannot afford to, or we don't have what is needed? Does that mean we don't have the chance to do dana? Now we will look at the Payasi Sutra. Okay, now this sutta covers a very long debate session where Venerable Kumara Kassapa answered a lot of questions from Prince Payasi, who wanted to refute the view that there is no afterlife, there are no devas, devas are higher beings, and there's no results of karma. So ultimately, okay, after listening to 15 parables from Venerable Kumara Kassapa, Payasi declared himself converted. Okay, decided to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And then he decides to establish a charity for ascetics and Brahmins, all the beggars and the needy. So he got this Brahmin youth, Uttara, to supervise the almsgiving. But he offered very poor food and cloth. So this Uttara voiced his disapproval. But sir, the food in the donation is like this: unhusked rice porridge together with pickled brine. You wouldn't want to touch it with your foot, much less eat it. And a rough cloth with knotted fringe. You wouldn't want to touch it with your foot, much less wear it. So Payasi agreed to upgrade offerings to provide the same kind of food that he ate and the same kind of clothes that he wore. So this Uttara was then able to carry out the almsgiving properly. Now, according to the Sutta, Uttara was reborn after death in a higher heavenly realm than the prince, because he reorganized the charity and he gave attentively, sincerely, and thoughtfully. Now, this shows that, number one, you can still reap the benefits of giving, even if the gift is not yours, as long as you have wholesome motivations behind your act of giving. And number two, dana creates the right causes and conditions for favorable rebirth, and actually also beyond that. Okay, as shown in the next sutta. Now, in this Sumana Sutta, Princess Sumana, the daughter of King Pasenadi, asked the Buddha this: "Here, Bhante, there might be two disciples of the Blessed One, equal in faith, virtuous behavior, and wisdom, but one is generous while the other is not. With the break of the body after death, they would both be reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. When they have become devas, would there be any distinction between them?" And the Buddha answered, "There would be, Sumana. The generous one, having become a deva, will surpass the other in 5 ways: in celestial lifespan, beauty, happiness, glory, and authority." Glory here refers to achievement and prosperity, okay? And authority means influence and power. So when they again become human beings, the generous one will surpass the other in 5 ways: in human lifespan, human beauty, human happiness, human glory, and human authority. So it doesn't just stop at rebirth. Okay, you benefit even beyond that. So from this sutta, it is very obvious that dana yields great rewards. But you don't want to wait. Let's say you don't want to wait until next life. I want the benefits now. What about the benefits in this lifetime? Okay, now in this sutta, a general named Siha approached the Buddha and asked him to point out a directly visible fruit of giving. Now, so this is what the Buddha said to him. Okay, munificent giver, munificent here means generous. Okay, is dear and agreeable to many people. Good persons resort to the donor, acquires a good reputation, approaches whatever assembly confidently and composed, is reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. This is the fruit of giving pertaining to future lives. Now, some people will say, I give and give, or in this life, or I cannot get back in terms of money. I have to wait until next lifetime. Actually, Ajahn Chakino actually told us a story about dana. It was a very simple but very powerful story. And of all the stories I've heard from the various Ajahns, and his was the one I remembered up to today because it made a big impact on my mind. Just to cut a long story short, okay, he told us of how he started the orphanage in Mehong Song because somebody left a baby in front of his kuti, and then he needed help. He approached his sister, and at the time she had just started working. Okay, but even though she didn't have the limitless fund, she helped him very generously. Okay, and later on, she started doing very well. Okay, and she's apparently pretty wealthy now. So, what do you think? And this is not the only example. Okay, from go and observe the world around you and see for yourself. Okay, there's just the law of cause and effect. Just keep giving. So let's do a recap of what we have learned from the suttas with respect to the giver. Now, first thing, give with a wholesome state of mind. Now, in the act of giving, there is the intention to give. But this intention must always be supported by wholesome motivations. We learn to give with the right motivation and the right attitude. We do not give with aversion, okay, in a form of anger, fear, or with indifference. It doesn't mean just because you give, you will create merit. It must be with a wholesome state of mind. And as the Buddha said, we give wherever the mind feels inspired, and we maintain a good mental state before, during, and after giving. Do not expect anything in return. Now, the natural tendency is to expect something in return. There is nothing wrong with that. It is hard to be completely altruistic all the time, but with repeated acts of giving, and then with our mental cultivation and with wisdom, there will come a time when we give simply because it helps others and it brings us joy. The purer the motivation, the more the merit. So what is the best motivation? Okay, ennobling the mind, purifying the mind. Let this motivation, even for simple act of giving, bring you along on your journey on the Noble Eightfold Path. And you can still perform dana even if the gift is not yours. So when you see someone else present dana and you can't afford what the other person gives, be generous in your praise. Show appreciation for their effort. This is what we call appreciative joy. It is one of the 4 sublime states. So the Thais have this habit of saying anumodana when they witness other people's meritorious deeds. So rejoicing in the merits earned by others is itself a meritorious deed. Okay? So next week, we are going to look at how we cultivate the act of giving in the right way with respect to the gift itself and the recipient. Okay, I'll stop here.